I see as taking a couple steps forward and then a step back. It just seems we just can't seem to get that momentum just to plow forward going. A lot of it has to do with the weather. You know, the weather was a big factor a year ago, a winter, and this past winter, it's been a big factor. We also haven't been able to, there's a lot of issues relating to the use, you know, at least in Virginia, of federal contractors and that whole issue of, you know, the federal government cutting back. So there's been that issue, and then wages just have not grown. And so when you don't have wage growth, you don't have a lot of other kind of growth either. So the next big thing is, you know, we need to have some wage growth, and I'm not sure how soon that's going to come about.
I guess I kind of bring definitely a different perspective than these guys, because I've only been in Richmond for 5 years, and all of those 5 years are as a business reporter, so that's my purview in terms of an outlook on the economy. When I got here in 2010, pretty much once a week we were writing about a big builder or a decent-sized builder either going into bankruptcy or having like a huge plot of land going into foreclosure. I mean, almost weekly we had those stories for, you know, at least the first year, and then it's faded off to where you don't see those stories anymore. Now, almost weekly we have a story about a new residential development going up, you know, 200 units here, or a new mixed-use development there. Back then, all those things that were going into foreclosure were banks foreclosing on those properties because the builders weren't paying the bills. Now, you're seeing that number on the bank's balance sheet drop. It's slow. I mean, you mentioned it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back maybe. It's slow, it's steady. And I guess maybe there's that view of when will we get back to normal?
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever probably going to happen. You know, the normal of 2005 and 6 was probably, in hindsight, abnormal. Like irrational exuberance, I think someone was quoted as saying once, the owner of your company now.
Warren Buffett.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't think it'll ever get back to what we all had back then, but I think it's definitely much better just since I've been here in 5 years.
I would agree. Richmond's economy actually is doing a little bit better perhaps than the state is, because I think back in April we actually came back to being the same level of jobs we had before the recession. We're still not there statewide, and it's kind of ironic in that Virginia's unemployment is like 4.7%, which is still the lowest east of the Mississippi, but its growth rate has really slowed. We used to be one of the states that had the highest GDP growth rate every year. Now we're among the slowest. And so in a way, Richmond, is doing better than the state as a whole. And part of the reason for the slowdown, of course, is federal spending, which hit Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads really hard. So because Richmond's economy is fairly diversified, it's not as dependent solely on, you know, either the Defense Department or a dying industry as we saw in Danville and that area. It really is, it's better prepared in a way to recover than perhaps other parts of the state.
And even though we were diverse, who would have ever thought that Circuit City would have gone out of business? Who would have ever thought Land America? I mean, we're talking 2 Fortune 500 companies that left this area in 2000 before you got here.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, yeah, we are better, but you know, we're not back to where we used to be. And I don't know that we ever will be.
And being a state capital provides a buffer, and it's a buffer for both ends. It's a buffer for maybe not allowing super rapid growth like you might see like in Northern Virginia or someplace else, but it's also a buffer to protect against those big downfalls. I mean, we at BizSense, we focus on hard news, so we don't do a ton of sort of overarching trend kind of coverage, but I mean, we'll cover, I guess, something you could call a trend that we've covered over the last couple of years is the rise of the brewery industry, speaking my strange way of beer, which is local. I remember the first story we really did on that was Hardywood, when they were first getting going. I think they'd just gotten their business license, and we called them up. We saw this thing, it said Hardywood Park Craft Brewery, and we said, what's that? Because up until then, it was pretty much legend, and that was basically it.
And actually, Richmond's population has reversed its decline over many decades, and now is like projected to be 217,000 or something like that, which it hadn't been probably back in the 60s. And so you see also the effect they're having on other industries, like in banking. Millennials are not really crazy about going into a bank branch and talking to somebody. They want to do everything online. And there was some sort of survey that said if Google had a bank or Amazon had a bank, would you do a banking with them rather than your local bank? And they said yes. So banks are really feeling this, and we have found that a lot of banks in Virginia are already adjusting to that. In fact, Burke and Herbert Bank up in Alexandria, which is probably 170 years old, has a person who's working on this. So millennials, I think, are the new baby boomers, and they're actually bigger than the baby boomers. So they're going to change a lot of things. The other thing I would say is a trend is cybersecurity. People really woke up when Target announced it had several hundred million, not hundred, but tens of millions of credit card records that were hacked. And this has been going on, of course, in the government for a long time, and it's really a cyber war, but it's a war that now is getting into business as well. And one of the few places that the federal government is actually increasing their spending is in cybersecurity. And of course, this is extending into in the insurance industry. There's cyber insurance now, various types. So you're going to see more and more about that, and that's going to be increasingly crucial for business, even at the smallest level, is cybersecurity.
If you look around in the Richmond region, there are tons of these new businesses that are opening up that could be at one point the next Circuit City or the CarMaxes of the world, for instance. I mean, you've got car lots, for instance. You've got Evitran, which is the plugless, device for your e-cars, electronic cars. You've got you've got Leadberry. You've got all these startup small businesses, and they're all being started up by 20 and 30 something year olds. And I think that kind of a trend in terms of how they deal with the consumer and how they deal with others and stuff, as you were talking about, they want to live downtown. They don't want to drive. They don't want to have cars. They want to be able to bike to work or to walk to work or take public transportation. They want to be able to eat. That's why you're seeing this big, huge foodie kind of thing that's happening in the Richmond region. And they want to drink.
Right.
They're beers.
I'd say that it's a generational thing. And back when I was with the Times-Dispatch, the managing editor at the time, Louise Seals, had every editor and associate editor to go out and talk to like 10 people under 30 and say, how do you get your news? And almost all of them, and this is more than 10 years ago, said, I never see a newspaper. I've never bought a newspaper in my life. And so that generation is now 40, and that's going to progress. We all know that. But I would say that print still has a place. It's maybe going to be a niche product, but just like we have found that vinyl records have made a comeback because they found that there's a quality of sound that you don't get on the CD. I think there's still an experience that people have with a print product that they don't get. Laptops are probably going to go away anyway, but on your iPad or on your phone, you're going to read the New York Times on your phone. Sunday New York Times? I don't know. So I think that there's still going to be a place for print, but it's obviously that the dominant movement is going digital.
And I was going to say to that point too, I have a couple friends, and for years they never got the paper. They'd read it online occasionally or more regularly and stuff, and now they're in their 40s,
right?
And they've gone back to the paper. And the reason why they've gone back to the paper is because they found it clunky online, they couldn't find things. And that could have been back in the day too, when we weren't really so concerned about what our websites looked like and stuff. Now we do. I mean, our website, when we redesigned it back in December, we went out to an outside firm and actually had someone come in and help us redesign it for more readability and usability and moving things around. So I'm obviously a print person, but I think we also recognize that we have to kind of change with the times too. And that includes, putting things out on the web, tweeting things out, posting things on Facebook, wherever might be the case, to reach, people. There was somebody in our LMR class who says she never gets the paper. I mean, this is I won't say who she is, but she's a county, she works for one of the counties, and she is an attorney, so she's highly educated, and she gets all of her information from tweets. So, how you get 140 characters, what is it, 140, 150
Yeah.
characters, news story, I'm not really sure, but I think we're adjusting. I mean, we're putting things out on our website much faster. When things happen, we put it out there right away, but then come back with a fuller story later.
So I'll answer this, I guess, as the lone digital-only person up here. I mean, this question really leads to more questions, I guess. What will my generation? My father and my grandfather have always read a newspaper. So when I'm their age, will I want that touch and feel of a newspaper, or will I be reading it from what we know as tablets today, or like from something that's implanted in my brain and I can scroll around my eye or whatever? Like, no. And what will my baby son's generation, who knows what will be. I mean, what I do know is news is being consumed more than ever, by far, just because there's more mediums to consume it from. So there's more news being consumed than ever. Now it's just a matter of what is that model going to be going forward. Print is not dead. I don't even think it's really dying. It's just a matter of what is and this goes into like the business of media companies, and maybe that's not where you wanted to go with this question, but what is a newspaper company that's most of its money is made in print? What does that look like in 15 years? What's the size of that company
We
going
will
to look
see.
like?
Gannett's spinning off their newspaper division, and I think Tribune did the same thing.
Well, Media Journal did.
Right,
Right.
right,
Basic
true.
stuff, so
True.
it got rid of the.
Yeah, so they're on their own, so we'll see what the market thinks about that.
I think the key thing is, 20 years ago, I remember we started posting all our stuff online.
Yeah,
It's called Gateway Virginia. This is 20 years ago.
right.
And all of us, reporters and editors, are like, why are we giving our stuff away for free? And we weren't doing anything to keep our print readers. We were giving everything away
Right.
for free. And I remember people talking about this, even readers out there like, well, why do I want to get your publication when I can get it for free online? So, what we need to figure out is a couple things. We need to figure out the model
Right.
that's going to make money for everybody. And we need to figure out a way of monetizing, the web, better. And maybe by giving it away for free, now we're starting to charge. You get 20, if you're not a subscriber to the paper and you don't have all access, you get 20 clicks a month on one of our stories. Otherwise, you have to start paying. Well, if you think about it, for years the banks had ATM machines and they never charged you any fees or anything like that. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, we can charge.
Right.
The same thing with the airline industry. Before, just think about the millions, hundreds of millions of dollars the airline industry is now charging us for bags. Before it was free. You fly someplace, it's $25 to send your bag along. $25, so it's $50 round trip. You think about it. So, and before that was never the way, but people are paying for it. So I think we just have to kind of figure out a way. We have the key thing is making sure that we have the content that people want, and it's energizing them to be able to wanting to read that stuff.
And one thing I'll add, on the flip side, I mean, we give our news away for free. We have a premium paid portion of what we do, but all the news is free. So that makes the model of like your company a little bit tougher. Not tougher, but you guys have to sort of watch how we do what we do. We're a six-person company here in Richmond, 4 people in Denver, so we don't have people working the printing press. Unionized workers that work the printing press. We don't have to worry about the ups and downs of the price of newsprint around the world. And there's like 3 we were talking about this in our newsroom the other day. There's like 3 companies that control all the newsprint on the planet pretty much. And they can kind of fluctuate the prices as they need to. And as those prices fluctuate, big media companies have to make decisions about their costs every quarter. We don't have to worry about that. So our model is not the finite answer. Their model is not the finite answer. it's going to be like somewhere in the middle. I don't know how or who's going to figure it out, but you know,
Someone like
Someone-
Mark Zuckerberg will figure it out.
Yeah.
Tons of money. Let me just start off. The Richmond Times-Dispatch has not eliminated its business section.
That's true.
In fact, the Richmond Times-Dispatch is probably one of the rare papers in the country that still has almost a full page of stock agate, because that's what our readers, mostly older, that don't go on the computer, that's what they want. But we have a daily section. We've had a daily section for the last 4 years. We had, for a period of time, tucked it inside the Metro section, but before that, we had a daily section for 10 years. So we haven't. We've gone against the trend of what a lot of newspapers are doing, and we've added more and more content. Our Metro Business section on Mondays this past week was 32 pages or 36 pages, and
Right.
that's a lot of content, and then it's tucked inside of that. Our Sunday Business section, which we used to have be more focused on money and consumer issues, we changed back in February to allow for more content of different type of thing. We did the Money Wise moniker shortly after the recession started back in '09, and we felt like, okay, money issues are still very important, but there's a lot of other business stories that we could be writing about that we haven't been able to because of that. And our Sunday Reader is our biggest publication of the week, so we wanted to be able to do that. Unfortunately, in that Sunday Business section, the Wall Street Journal, which was one of our content providers for 15 plus years, they decided to pull out and they didn't want to do their Sunday supplements anymore. So we now have the New York Times in there. But so to get back to your point, I think that people are earning, they want business news. It affects everybody's lives. Whether you go to the grocery store, whether you're paying your utility bill, whether the environment's being affected, whether you're driving someplace, everything, business news affects so many, places. That's why I think you're seeing a thriving business, journalism publications rather, whether it's us, you, them.
Yeah, I would agree with Greg. I don't know which way we're going to go.
I don't think
But
that's-
I would agree with Greg that there's no lack of appetite for business news, and there are lots of stories out there. So it's not if newspapers aren't running business sections, it's not because that they've decided that nobody's interested in business news. I think it's just a consequence of the economics of how much newspaper we've got, how we're going to spread it around. I am sure that the people down that I knew at the pilot, probably you did, were totally opposed to abolishing a business page down there. And of course, they still have inside business down there. But I'm proud of the fact that Metro Business is still around after all of these years. That was one of the first to start, I think, after maybe the Washington Post and the Miami Herald perhaps pioneered it back in the 80s. And it's still,
Been around since '85.
Yep. So Tom Silvestri was the first editor.
Yes.
But I think that whether it will return, to newspapers or not, I don't know. But people are going to find business news wherever they can find it.
well, the reason newspapers cut their daily business sections is because there were no ads to support those sections for many of them. Most days, correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a ton of ads in the daily business page of the Times-Dispatch. You guys have Metro Business, which has ads in it and drives revenue. But day to day, there's not a ton of ads in that section specifically. So will it ever come back? Yeah, if all of a sudden people want to start putting ads in that daily business page in a newspaper, whatever market it might be, then they might be inclined to bring it back because it helps with the cover that whatever the salaries and expenses are of putting that section out. For us, BizSense is thriving. We're a growing, profitable, debt-free company, and it's basically because we put out news that allows people to have information, intelligence, whatever they need to go about their business day. And that's pretty much it. And we've been able to hone in on a niche audience that I think is probably different and small, and probably even more narrow of a niche than the Times-Dispatch's business section. You guys are a business page, but you have to go through that filter of being the newspaper for the entire community, the entire Richmond region. We don't do that. We don't, not to say we don't care about the Richmond region as a whole, but we care about business people in the Richmond region, and that's it. So say, for example, we may do a story, you guys may take it from a perspective, and I'm not excluding you, but you guys are more, more of a niche audience too, I would think, but you guys would put it through that filter of how does this affect business people, but how does it also affect the region as a whole?
Yeah.
So maybe it's a business story, but there's also the consumery side of that. We don't care about any of that, and that's because we know our audience, and we know what our audience wants. I mean, we know our audience down to the person. How many in here are subscribers to our morning email? See, I could tell each of you what stories you click on every day in our email. I can tell you what ads you click on, all that stuff. We don't share. Yeah, we don't share that information.
Like a camera or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that's how we've thrived. Is if we've zeroed in on an audience, we've zeroed in on content that they need, and that audience is coveted enough by advertisers who want to get in front of them. That model can translate to print. It's just a matter of the economics, I would say. I mean, which is where Virginia Business comes in. You guys have a much broader statewide business audience, but it's a very niche business audience, and they know you can get them in front of people statewide, whereas we only care, what we would call hyper-local. That's what people in our industry say, so that's what we focus on.
Right.
And one thing that Robert, one thing that your publication does is you do have a daily email newsletter that goes out, so you keep people reminding, it's a constant reminder that you're out there and something.
Right.
Some of the stories you do, some of them you pick up from other publications. And stuff, so.
Right. It's primarily an aggregation of stories from around the state, but we do some of our own. So we'll put on, probably a dozen stories from various newspapers across the state.
So could I ask, so you have your daily email, it has ads and content that's aggregated for the most part. The bulk of Virginia Business's revenue, I assume, comes from the print still.
Yes.
Have you guys, how have you guys evolved in terms of priority of coverage? To say, this percentage of revenue is print, this percentage is online. If it's shifted or as it's shifted, how do you guys decide what priority do we put on the journalism that goes into the email versus the print? So right now you're beholden to that print publication because that's the bread and butter. So you put more of the journalism resources into that.
Right.
At what point would you say, all right, we're seeing it shift over here, we need real original content every day, more of that in the email? I'm just curious.
That's hypothetical, I couldn't say. But I mean, we have basically 4 editors at the magazine, and we are combing, PR Newswire, Business Wire, whatever we get, over email or Twitter, for stuff every day. And we're probably doing mostly just quick hit types of headline things for the email. But that story may evolve into something bigger that would go in the magazine. And most of the stories we do in the magazine are trend pieces, kind of looking at big pictures like, okay, this happened in Richmond. What does that mean to other parts of the state? Can we connect some dots here and see what's happening? Is this part of a trend?
And one thing we have done, we used to have for a couple of years, we had something called Work at Richmond. It was an email-only newsletter that was mostly focusing on work-related issues, small businesses. And we changed that last year in July to a regular daily business. So we picked up content that we had in the newspaper, as well as stuff that we had done that maybe only be online, versus just the Work at Richmond, which was more narrow focused. And I asked our online business editor this afternoon to give me some stats. So the last half of last year after we did it, our web traffic was up 39%, which tells us more people so they're getting in their inboxes, and we have tens of thousands of people who are getting this every single day. So it's up 39%. And so far this the last 3 months of this year, our traffic is up 21% over the same period a year ago. Now that same period a year ago was looking at Work at Richmond period and stuff like that, but still those are strong increases. So it's telling us that people are reading our stuff, and we can also, which we don't do, we can also figure out who's reading our content as well.
really need to have something that's unusual to tell me. And don't send me an email and call me 5 minutes later and say, "Did you get my email?" That's another no-no.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, there's these weird sort of robotic PR blasts that come from God knows where in the U.S. and they have a way of putting your first name in there. Michael, hello, Michael.
Right.
Blah, yada yada yada, and it didn't. No one typed that. You know, it's some machine or maybe it's a intern or somebody that typed it out. But they blasted out. Has nothing to do with business news. Has nothing to do with Virginia. Has nothing to do with
And
Richmond.
do you go by Michael or Mike?
Michael.
Okay, see, I go by Greg, but my email is Gregory. And so when I get one of those, it says Gregory, I know that they have no clue anything about me. It's the ones where it says Greg that I worry about.
Yeah. So yeah, there's that. And then I guess on the local level, it's people who clearly, and this doesn't happen a lot, fortunately, because I guess BizSense has been around long enough, people know us. But those who just have, it's clear that they haven't read our site, and you know BizSense would never do a story like that you're pitching us. I would say if there are PR people in the room who are looking for that kind of advice, like know the publication you're pitching. If they don't do features and kind of trendy kind of feature stories, just know that ahead of time, and you could gain respect from the reporters on the other end a lot faster than you could the other direction. The other thing I would say is to, if you're trying to get a story like that published, build a relationship with the person first. Maybe call them up, talk to them, just get to know them, tell them the kind of stuff you do ahead of time, and then that way they know who you are. It makes it a little bit easier next time you do send them something.
So I was going to mention the email thing because I literally get 400 or 500 emails a day, literally, and most of them are like mostly delete. I just delete them and stuff. To Michael's point, if I get an email that says Gregory, I know automatically that this person either doesn't know me or hasn't done any homework. You got to do your homework. You got to figure out what's your publication, where you think that your story is going to fit, what type of publication you want it to fit in. Each of us have different niches. Yeah, we might cover the same stories, but we all have a different niche and stuff, so you have to kind of figure that out. The other thing you need to do your homework in terms of figuring out who to contact. I can't tell you the number we get these blind emails. So I get it, I'm like, oh gosh, well, so-and-so should get this. Well, so-and-so has already gotten it. In fact, now all of a sudden 3 people in the newsroom are sending it to so-and-so, in the newsroom, because we don't know who it's been sent to. They just want to blast an entire newsroom and stuff, so you kind of have to do your homework in terms of figuring out who it should go to. And if you don't know, then you go to the department editor. If it's a feature story, go to the features editor. If it's a business story, go to the business editor. If it's a Metro News story, then you go to the Metro News editor and stuff. So you kind of have to figure those things out first. And then also know the publication in terms of where something like this might fit. I mean, some things might fit in Metro Business, where we do a lot more listings. Something might be more of an interesting Sunday story. Something might be, hey, this is happening, this is a good daily story, and here's the reason why. And to Robert's point, everybody has an anniversary. Don't tell me a story about, my company's been around for 25 years and we want you to do a story. Well, okay, I don't care about you've been around 25 years. What I do care about is, what are you doing now? What are you doing now in terms of advancing the business? What changes have you made? How have you been able to thrive for the 25 years and continue maybe for another 25 years? So those are probably some key things.
Yeah, it's not news that you're still in business. You don't start a business to go out of business.
Right.
That's kind of the way I like to explain it. Just like a bank, we used to get pitches from the banks. We're profitable, yet we're not losing money. That's what a bank is supposed to do. It's news when a bank loses money.
Yes. And be able to, the other thing is, I know on the flip of it, so if something bad happens, you got to step up to the plate and tell us, because we're going to find it. We are like, if you give us enough food, for instance, I always tell this analogy, if you give enough food to most people, they're satisfied. Some might want to have seconds, some might want to have a dessert, whatever might be the case. But if you give enough food, people are going to be happy. If you give us enough information, people are going to be happy. Or, we as journalists are going to be happy. You start cutting off that information, what happens when you cut off somebody from food? You don't have any food, what are you going to do? You're going to hunt it anywhere you can. Okay? And so that might mean you may not like the outcome of that story. So it's best to be upfront. Now, sure, we're still going to probably go hunt for other information, but be upfront, step up the plate, let us know, answer our questions. Don't give us, we're not gonna call you back or whatever, or no comment or anything like that. Because that doesn't, the people out there know a no comment means you're hiding something. So it's always best to kind of, be upfront right away, answer the questions. And don't tell us, oh, we're gonna issue a press release. Well, what's that gonna do? What are you gonna do? We're gonna take that press release and put it in our publications? Well, no, we're gonna rewrite that press release.
Well, first of all, it's not been in anybody else's publication. That it's something nobody else has seen, and it's again got some of these other elements we've talked about. It shows some initiative. It shows there's an actual story behind whatever product or the success of the business. So I think that's part of it. Is you come to us with something that really tells a story. And it's just not, we make widgets and we make money. End of story.
I would say a good pitch is not expecting just that press release to be regurgitated and the canned quotes that are in that press release to be regurgitated. And to make the people that you're quoting in that press release available to reporters. If you send out a press release on a certain day, you ideally would, the people quoted in that press release, so say you're the PR person, and you would want the CEO of that company, if he's quoted in there, to be ready to take calls, and to not have to receive a press release from a PR person, say it's a PR firm working on behalf of a company, and then from that press release you then have to go to the in-house marketing person at that company to get more canned quotes. You then want to be able to go straight to the CEO. That goes a long way for reporters, I think, and having that person that's going to be speaking with the reporters prepared to speak freely and hopefully not just repeat exactly what's in the press release, which happens a lot as well.
I'd probably have to say among the best are those that are unusual or unique. You're pitching me a unique or unusual story or a person in your company or a product, whatever might be the case, that others don't know about. That makes that to me, that hooks you in. It makes you more interested in wanting to write about something like that. I'll start off.
Sure, go
I've got
ahead.
some. So I always tell people never say, and this is what PR people do, don't ever say no comment. No comment has a negative connotation to it. Think about something else. If Michael says to me, asks me a question, I may say, oh, well, Michael, that's a nice coat you have on, or that's a nice day out there. You completely say something different, okay? Don't answer a question with the question. When I was covering Ashland and Hanover County back in the day, the early 90s, I was doing a story on Randolph-Macon College. And the president up there, they're having an issue with alcohol. They had, like a fraternity had gone, they had a big party and one of their freshman members had drank so much vodka that he was vomiting and it ripped his esophagus. There was a girl who was she got so drunk she was trying to touch the train one night and stuff. So they were trying to deal with alcoholism and also with the issue of date rape. A very important issue, and so I sat down with the president of the university and I said to him, I said, so are you going to have sex patrols? And his response was, no, we're not having sex patrols. So what do you think is the quote going to be in the paper? No, we're not having sex patrols, which almost sounds like you might be thinking of having sex patrols. So you just got to be careful of how you answer a question. Don't answer with a question with a question. Those are some of my thoughts.
I would say drop the jargon if you're able to. Some people are not able to, depending on the industry. But we find ourselves talking to the owner of a company from time to time, and especially we cover a lot of startups. So say it's a startup and they do something kind of interesting and unique, but it's hard to exactly tell what they do. So we kind of dig in a little deeper, and you can tell they just cannot say it in English. They cannot tell you in English what they do. To where we'll have to say, imagine you were telling your 5-year-old daughter what daddy does.
Right.
What daddy does every
That's
day.
really, that's a good way to put
And I
it.
mean, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because we have jargon in everyone has jargon in their own industry, but if you can speak in English, it makes it a
Yeah.
lot better and a lot easier for everybody involved.
I would echo that. It's sad that, at the bottom of a press release, oftentimes, you look down there to see what the company does, and it is so pie in the sky, full of jargon and everything else that you have no idea. And this is supposed to be the mission statement that you are not only putting out to the world, but putting out to your employees. And it's like, how in the world do they know what their company's about from this gobbledygook? And we especially get this from a lot of tech companies who, when you finally kind of pull it apart and find out what they're doing, it's really, really interesting stuff. But like you say, they're not putting it in any language that people can understand.
They have a lot of synergistic relationships.
But I would also say, don't be scripted. Don't just memorize a script of responses and then spew it out. If you're talking to a human being, talk to him as you would anybody, rather than trying to be so precisely, on the script, because that just doesn't fly.